Welcome everybody. As always, please do me a favor and let me know if the audio and visual is all good on your end. I assume it is, so I'm just going to hop right into the charts. Well, guys, Bitcoin has been dumping a little bit since my last stream, which shouldn't be all too shocking, as I was warning about this 4-hour resistance zone for a week or two now, and I love to see such a perfect rejection like this. I still have about half of my most recent short running. Ultimately, I'm hoping for much lower targets, but I'm always willing to accept the possibility that I could be wrong. So I've been paying myself along the way. With that, let's jump right into the 4-hour here. Like I said, guys, I mean, this is just a typical STUBER fib setup. And in my last video, in my last live stream with you guys on Friday, I believe it was, I was actually talking about how much I liked this exact setup because this is such a clean STUBER fib setup. All right. And by that, I mean the fact that we had this low, a lower low, and our obvious lower high, our confirmed lower high, the highest point between the two. Basically, the reason why I like this so much is because there is no minor structure adjustments that, there's no structure in here that's getting all messy by setting a lot of, little micro lower lows and lower highs or anything like that. The fact that we just had this one breakdown and then reclaiming this level. I mean, maybe a lot of you guys ended up catching the long with the reclaim of support there. But at the end of the day, that's still a bearish structure break, right? That doesn't necessarily mean short right now because support has broken, because so often you get that retracement, you get that retest of resistance after breaking structure like that. But this is such a clean break that I was very excited to get up to these levels. And in my last couple of streams, that's what I've been basically warning about, that, hey, we are just starting to test resistance. And that's a key thing, key takeaway from this, you guys, is I was also mentioning that, around 108,000 US dollars, if we bounce up to that level, that we were going to see, people starting to feel that FOMO. We were going to start seeing a lot more bullish posts, a lot of celebrations by larger accounts and stuff like that on social media, right? As we approach that 108,000 US dollars. That's very typical because that's where our STUBER fib pocket comes into play. And that's why it's such a perfect bull trap, is because, people love getting more bullish at resistance, just like they start getting scared at support. We all know that you're supposed to buy support and sell resistance, but when it comes time to actually pulling that trigger, it's very hard to do. And this is one of those cases where everyone starts celebrating at resistance. I mean, that's kind of the wrong time to be feeling that FOMO, right? So as it stands right now, love to see such a perfect rejection like that, even losing this level here. I mean, if we kind of reclaim the support of this little range that we had right here, at that point, I think that we can start testing higher up into our mid to long-term resistance pocket here. But I was very clear about the fact, guys, that, we could end up going a little bit higher, but we are just at the very start of this resistance, because when I'm looking for shorts, I mean, yeah, usually I'm more on the 5-minute or the 1-minute, not so much the 4-hour. But when I look at these setups, I'm only starting to ladder into my position at the 786. So I treat this a little bit different. Those of you guys who have been in lots of my streams and been in my Telegram channel and all that sort of good stuff, you'll know that I do more so trade the 5-minute chart, but I love looking at, let's say, a 4-hour and then starting to see, a 5-minute STUBER fib setup inside a 4-hour STUBER setup kind of a thing. So that's basically what I ended up having here. So anytime I was seeing lower time frame short opportunities inside this purple box, I've been just swinging at those and very quickly starting to take my scalp profits at my range targets when I pull a fib, and then hoping for a runner. And this most recent one that I had a few days ago, it did turn into one of those runners. So the risk on a setup like that was so small compared to the size of running position that we ended up getting here. So basically what I mean by that is this purple box, again, is my 4-hour resistance here. But notice that we ended up actually getting this structure break on a lower time frame, right about... let's just say right here would have been our high, and this would have been our highest high on the trend. That means where's the lowest point between these two would be right here. When we ended up breaking that structure, that's where we can end up looking for that setup, right? That's where we pull our fibs, and look at that. We ended up getting right up there. I mean, I could have got a slightly better entry, but I'm not going to complain with the one that I got because it ended up running and it's a beautiful position to be in. But that was such a small risk involved with that sort of a scalp entry for a potential swing trade type of setup, right? So we have been trending down for the last few days. Even just recently had this little STUBER fib set up down here on a lower time frame. This is the 1 minute now. But yeah, basically the way I see it right now is I do think that there's a possibility for further downside. However, that being said, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a bounce right now. But just looking at the 4 hour, we actually haven't reached any of my STUBER fib targets yet on the 4 hour, right? My first target would actually be the 0.5 fib, which is right around 104.5 thousand US dollars. The 214 fib target would be down around 100.8 thousand US dollars. That does not mean we have to hit those levels. Like I said, I've been taking profits along the way. I only have half my position running. I aim to take more profits, front running this fib slightly, just like I would down here. But ultimately, I mean, I want to hold on to a chunk of this position if I can, because if we end up seeing some of the bigger moves that I've been predicting recently, I mean, if we end up retesting this whole swing, I mean, we could see significantly lower levels, because after we ended up setting these lows, that's where we kind of reclaimed our support. We even broke the downtrend right here. And ever since that, this is all untested, right? We just kind of went straight up in this uptrend, just setting higher highs, higher highs, higher highs, higher highs, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas right now that we've actually broke some structure, we could be starting to see one of these. And yeah, obviously on the 4 hour, it would take a while to play out, and it doesn't have to play out at all. However, just for structure for what it is, I'm very open to the possibility that we go down to these levels, because the thing that's going to do, I mean, just be the worst on your mental well-being and your trading journey in general is if you ever say we can't go there just because you feel like we shouldn't, or you feel like those levels are too low or whatever. Just understand, those of us who have been through one full or multiple, complete market cycles, we know that anything is possible, and Bitcoin loves to see massive corrections, and that goes for all time frames. So this wouldn't even be unhealthy, in my opinion. This wouldn't even be bearish if we ended up retesting some of these levels down here. That would just be a bullish retest, in my opinion, of the full swing, since we ended up finding our bottom around 74.5 thousand US dollars, right? When we started our recovery, basically the end of April there. Or sorry, rather the start of April, when we started our recovery, and none of that's been retested. So I would love to see some of that support get retested. Unfortunately for me, the market doesn't always give you what you want. So that's why I'm just taking it one trade setup at a time, but I'm always open to the idea of those bigger targets, or rather lower targets, but those bigger moves, and just understanding that the market doesn't really give a shit what my opinion is or how I feel about things. I would love for this market to go parabolic, you guys. I have a bunch of altcoins that I would love to see them go to the moon. Don't get me wrong. I also have a bunch of Bitcoin that I would love to see that end up climbing higher. But from an actual trader's perspective, I'm willing to just accept the volatility as it comes. From an investment point of view, yes, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin, and I have been ever since I started trading it. However, I am very I'm cut away from my emotions, basically. After a couple bear markets, your emotions kind of stop impeding with your analysis so much when you start to understand that anything can happen, and just being ready. That's basically what it comes down to, because a lot of people say, for example, if I'm saying, we could go up to whatever level, we could go down to whatever level. A lot of people take that as oh, you're saying it could go up or down. Yeah. If you're a trader and you're not looking at it that way, you are going to get so wrecked if you don't basically have a backup plan. If you are putting all your eggs in one basket saying this is what has to happen, that's not so much how we trade. I mean, analysis is great, but being able to have, a process for actually executing those trades, that's the important part. And that's why I love trading fibs, quite honestly, is just that it's so systematic. It's something that I can repeat, and it doesn't matter what time frames it is. Like I said, I mean, I treat structure the same: the 1 minute, the 5 minute, the 4 hour, the daily, the weekly, whatever. And guys, this is all stuff that I show in my free Telegram channel. There is a QR code on the screen, as well as a link in the description down below if you just want kind of more examples of how I look at STUBER fibs, you know, how I'm pulling them, how I look at structure, just kind of my overall thoughts on the market in general. Do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code. Like I said, I was warning. Basically, my plan was to keep shorting this 4 hour STUBER zone here. And that's what ended up happening here. Ended up getting into another one. I've shorted that 4 hour pocket probably 4 or 5 times now. And yeah, quite often it ends up being just a small profit and then stopped at break even. That's totally fine. Then once in a while, we end up getting this nice swing position out of a scalp entry like that. So like I said, in the Telegram, just kind of showing lots of examples. I mean, this was a great one, posted right from the bottom of the range, saying that this is where I kind of figured we were going. Boom, we ended up tagging that straight back down to some of my targets. So again, guys, it's nothing magical. It's just basic market structure, looking for those Fibonacci retracements, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, as far as the 4 hour, I mean, I think that we can go lower as far as my targets have not been hit yet. We also need to understand that there is potential support, right? I mean, we could have this block right here. That may end up flipping into support. We get some sort of a bounce, even if it's short-lived, and we end up getting some sort of a smaller fib, right? Because that's something to consider, guys, is that there is constantly ranges forming inside of bigger ranges, forming inside of bigger ranges, and so on, right? But as it looks right now on the 4 hour, I personally think that we're going to go a little bit lower, but the market doesn't always just go in one straight direction, right? So we're going to have to see what happens there. The weekly, I know a lot of people are getting very excited about this bullish candle on the weekly. To be completely honest, it literally hasn't changed a fucking thing for me. Sorry for the foul language, but honestly, that's just... yeah, it's great to see that we had a green candle, but we never even engulfed the previous wick, right? We ended up closing below this wick. We got above the candle bodies. That's nice to see. But we never did break that resistance. The RSI still has this nasty weekly, nasty bearish divergence from overextended territory down to that 70 level, and just looking like we're getting a third touch point off that resistance line. Obviously that can change. This week still has 5 days left before it closes, so a lot can happen with this RSI between now and then. Even if it goes a little higher though, I want that RSI to get back above that 70 level. At that point, I would think that it looks like the RSI is showing us what it's supposed to, which is the strength, right? The relative strength index. So if we get back above 70, at that point, I would say that, especially in an uptrend like this, in a macro uptrend, anytime we're overbought, that's actually a significant amount of buying strength, right? So right now, the fact that we keep testing the same level of resistance that we couldn't break way back in January or even back in December, you know, we're flirting with that same resistance level, but our strength is actually dropping every time we're touching that level. So I just can't get too much of my moon boy mentality back until that changes, basically. As far as the 1 minute, zooming right in here to the degenerate time frames here. Notice I do have this STUBER fib pulled here as well. Took a little bit of a scalp there, have a little bit of it running, but this was, again, just an additional scalp, basically. And my reasoning for this is because obviously we had this important structure back here. I did have the ALGO master. This actually isn't lining up anymore. It's showing the bullish side of it, but it did have the exact same, before it reset, it had the exact same fib pull as me. So that was a little additional confluence there. As well, the MDX trend master, we have basically what we printed here, which gave me another little bit of confluence, I suppose, is the fact that we ended up losing this trend, right? The fact that we had this upward sloping, well, we basically had a buy signal and a higher buy signal. We ended up losing that trend. So then we ended up printing a lower buy signal. And this is a trending indicator, right? So the fact that it ended up printing a lower buy signal It basically, it doesn't give me a ton of confidence on the bullish side of things yet, because they are trending to the downside. So that's where I basically go into my previous sell signal, right? Since we have a lower buy signal, I'm just assuming that a lower sell signal is going to come into play. So that's why I pulled my fib from basically the pivot point before this sell signal here. So again, a little bit of going off the market structure, just the fact that, like I said, we had this range up here. So pulling the fib from the top of that range, but also having a couple of indicators lining up with it, just giving me that additional confluence and confidence in just kind of a scalp setup on the 1 minute, right? So at this point, what I would be looking for is, since, like I said, we did end up getting that lower sell signal, just like I was assuming from the lower buy. So that gives me a little bit of confidence in this position here still. We've obviously hit my first target already, the 0.5 fib. But I think it can go a little bit lower. We're going to have to see. Either way, I've already bumped my stop loss to break even. My entry was about, I think it was 966. So just a little bit below my purple box here. But yeah, basically I'm either going to get stopped out on the rest of that scalp, or it's going to turn into a runner as well and hit my next target down here. But basically, if this trending indicator is of any significance here, let me just turn this off for a second, just so it's easier to see. I'm just going to pick the pivot point because we had another lower sell right here. I'm just going to make a line right there, because that is where we pivoted and we got our most recent lower sell signal, right? So even on the 1 minute chart, if we end up breaking above this level, which would be around 106,050 US dollars, if we break above that level, at that point, the downtrend of the MDX Trendmaster indicator is broken. And at that point, I wouldn't be in my scalp anymore, but I would actually be looking at taking some more profits off my bigger short position as well, just because there's potential for the trend to be shifting. And there's something that I wanted to mention with that as well. One of the reasons why in the title I say that, we could end up seeing a bounce from here. I stand by that. As bearish as I am, I do think it's possible for some sort of a bounce, because guys, this is another thing. Another one of the indicators I love to look at is the liquidations indicator. And this is showing basically 50 to 100x liquidation levels. And notice just how much liquidity ended up pooling below the price. And the market maker was generally, it's very typical of them to want to grab that liquidity, right? That's what market makers do. So when you see something like this forming, if you have any sort of indicator with a liquidity heat map or liquidations indicator like this, quite often you'll notice that you'll see a whole bunch of liquidity pooling, and then the market gets drawn towards those levels. So that's another reason why, again, I've been taking profits on this position as we go, and why I think it is very possible we get some sort of a bounce there. But you know what? Maybe that's all I got. Maybe all we got was up to that STUBER fib and we continue to the downside. I don't really want to swing at any longs right now myself, even though there is the possibility of a bounce there, just because I'm favoring the 4 hour so much, at least until we end up hitting this 0.5 fib around 104.5 thousand. After we hit that, I'm more open to the idea of a bounce, but honestly, even that might be short-lived if we're going to end up hitting the further targets. So, but yeah, lots of liquidity there. The good news for the bulls is we have grabbed most of that, right? So right now there's just basically a little bit of liquidity on both sides of the price right now. So just not any super heavy liquidation zones right now that I see that we would obviously be drawn towards, basically. Ended up having the same thing on Trump the other day. Actually, I ended up taking a little bit of a short on this. I'm not in it anymore. I ended up closing it fairly early. But basically we had a whole bunch of liquidity to the upside. And when we grabbed it all and we started losing structure like this, I ended up swinging at a little bit of a short, because there was a whole bunch of liquidations forming down here. Basically when we formed this little double bottom, like I've been out of this short since back here. I never did catch the remainder of this move. just because, like I said, we grabbed most of the liquidity. So I ended up closing my position on that, looking at it as more of a scalp as well. But obviously, Captain Hindsight here. It's always easy to go back and look at it and say this is how it went down. But just to show you how those liquidations work and how the market makers think by, targeting that liquidity that's in the market, right? Speaking of that, let's turn it on the 4 hour. What do we have going on? We do have a little more liquidity above us. We also have some below us. So a little bit of mixed signals there. Nothing that's super obvious and jumping out at me at this point. One thing that I do notice is there is some liquidity right down around my 214 fib target. But again, there is some above us too. So I can't give a strong argument for either the bears or the bulls in that case. The liquidations band, we are now below it again. So that could end up being respected as resistance. That's 1 point for the bears, I guess. But again, since we've been flip-flopping this line, there's a little bit of mixed signals there. Not feeling too confident on it either way. Point of control, volume delta indicator here. Notice that it is showing resistance right around 107.2 thousand US dollars. Just where we kind of started our little decline here. So yeah, just kind of the way I look at it, guys, is I wouldn't be too surprised to see some sort of a bounce. But again, I think momentum is to the downside. No matter how you look at it, structure is favoring the downside. This is not a personal bias. This is just fact. This is how the chart looks right now. And that's the thing too, guys, right? I know I often mention I don't trade fundamentals. I don't trade, what if this gets said or this gets announced or this gets tweeted. The reason I like trading charts is because the information is already there. You're not assuming that something is going to happen when it doesn't have to. We do have this structure, right? Low, lower, low, confirmed lower high. That's just fact. That has nothing to do with my bias. So that's why I like trading charts. And, yeah, sure, something could have got tweeted and sent us to the moon, but it never, right? Whereas the charts did end up getting that nice little bit of reaction, even if it's short-lived. As long as you're taking profits along the way, something like that can be, it's very powerful to understand basic chart structure, because I know a lot of people want to blame whatever happens in the media or whatever the media tells them is to blame for price action and stuff like that. But understand, typically those who are writing articles about crypto or the markets in general, there's usually 2 different articles that are ready to go. And depending how the price moves, that is going to be how the article explains what happened. I mean, you could have the same thing happen that could be blamed for both a bullish or a bearish thing, depending how they want to twist it, right? So that's why I would always rather trade charts rather than fundamentals, news, tweets, headlines, all that sort of stuff. Before I hop into any altcoins, I do just want to see, yeah, first time buyers at 100K haven't had their wrecked initiation. Very true. Very good point. That's exactly it, and a lot of those people, the ones who want to say that they are bullish, a lot of them won't actually be around. Oh, sorry, just closing my screen there by accident real quick there. Yeah, just understand that there's a lot of people who haven't been through a full market cycle yet who will, they think they're bullish until the price does something slightly bearish, and then all of a sudden they disappear from the market, right? But understand, those of us who have been in the market for several cycles and those of us who were bullish, when market structure started changing on the macro timeframes, rather than waiting for the media to tell us that Bitcoin was going to all-time highs. This has been a great run. I know it's smaller than typical market cycles, but Bitcoin doesn't really owe us anything. I mean, this isn't even the right chart when looking for the bottom. When breaking structure back here, sorry, that's more so what I meant. I've been bullish on Bitcoin since between 18, 20,000 US dollars. So to start getting cautious and a little bit bearish at 110,000 US dollars, I have no complaints about that. Bitcoin doesn't owe me anything the way I see it. Bitcoin dominance before I hop into a few altcoins here, you guys. We are at potential resistance. I know on the 4-hour we had already ended up testing some resistance. We ended up breaking it, but on the weekly here, zooming out to the macro, we are possibly facing a little bit of resistance here on the Bitcoin dominance. And that would actually be very good for altcoins, in my opinion. If we end up seeing some sort of a rejection here, we're going to have to see if it happens or not. I would feel a lot better about this acting as STUBER resistance if we had taken out this low back here. But notice that we ended up setting a higher low here rather than a lower low. Whereas if we had that slightly lower low, then I would have this fib and it would actually have momentum on its side. Structure would be it would be basically moving in the same direction, right? Whereas right now, the fact that we set a higher low and bounce into those levels, we just don't have the structure favoring it as heavily, but it is still resistance. So I would love to see this get rejected really hard off here and see altcoins go for a climb. I would absolutely love to see that. Another reason why I have this pulled like this, just like I was talking about earlier with Bitcoin, but basically setting a lower buy signal on the weekly, followed by, and this was our previous sell back here. So assuming that's going to carry on with a downtrend, basically I'm pulling a fib from the pivot point where we got our most recent sell signal, basically between the buy signal and the lower buy signal, right? So that's why I have my fib pulled this way. And yeah, so far we're right at the 786. Like I said, with Trump coin, I mean, there was that nice, easy liquidity grab before. I mean, it still looks like trash. I can't say too much good about this chart right now. It's just obviously in a strong downtrend, but again, that could change at any time. The 4-hour, we are near potential support. This is one of those times where we are obviously, just from an eyeball, I can tell we're right around a 786. Yeah, so right around that fib pocket right now. Understand that this is not necessarily an actual STUBER fib setup. It is a Fibonacci. It is a 786, 886 fib pocket, but we never really broke the downtrend, right? I mean, I would not consider this setting a higher high, because before this low here, our previous low was here, this little green wick here. Actually, let me remove this just so it's a little easier to see. And that means the lower high between the two was right here. So yeah, obviously we got a little wick above, basically a little swing fail there, but I would not say that that downtrend was broken. And in fact, that's where a perfect STUBER fib would have been from for the bearish side, right? Because we had that bearish momentum with the lower low there. And notice that we did get that. We are now actually testing the 214 fib target there, which makes sense because that's basically the opposite 786 pull. So yeah, basically Trump is at least getting towards support here. Well, it's actually in potential support now, but me personally, this isn't a coin that I'm super bullish on. So I don't know about that. We could zoom out even further here. Now, this one actually looks a little bit more promising, in my opinion, because there was obviously a downtrend broken, right? I mean, I don't care how you want to look at this. I wouldn't consider this one, but this one obviously broke. What was the one before that? Would have been up here, which is obviously broke. This one up here, not so much. But either way, there was a couple levels of structure broken there. And then we got our typical retracement, right? Just like I was talking about with Bitcoin and other things. You know, even on that side of things, we are now just kind of testing that STUBER fib pocket on a macro scale, right? This is the lowest one in this coin's existence. So if it's going to recover, I would like to see it recover fairly soon. I mean, I don't care because I don't care which way this goes. I typically like to short this one myself, but I would like to see it get a little bounce that I could, you know, short some sort of a retest up at resistance or something like that. But we will see what happens there. That's one that I'm probably going to start following a little bit closer moving forward here. Hype, I made promises I would check out Hype, and this is one that I am often interested in. I'm not in any position, so I'm just going to erase all of those. This is one, was it the daily we were checking out? I can't remember exactly, but either way, basically we had this range support down here. So if you wanted to look at it as far as a fib or just horizontal support here, either way, we obviously ended up finding some support here, even hit the 0.5 target. Not quite the 214 target yet. So we'll have to see what happens there. As far as this micro trend goes, I wouldn't really want to see Hype lose this level here, and that would be around $35.40. And basically my reasoning for that is that we have this high here and we have a higher high here. The lowest point between the two would be here. So if this micro trend is going to continue, I would like to see the price end up holding this as support moving forward, basically. Can we look for a bearish setup on this as well? Now, guys, I've mentioned this in several videos now that Hype is actually one that I'm far more bullish on than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is at macro resistance. It has been for months at this point. Hype, on the other hand, is actually in price discovery, right? We're setting higher highs and higher lows kind of a thing. But that being said, I do see a bit of a structure break here. I mean, if you really wanted to micro analyze, which you guys know I do, there was technically a high here with our little red candle as a pause, and then we went slightly higher. So whether you want to call it a swing fail or whatever, either way, we ended up losing that higher low, this little range here, whatever, we ended up losing it, flipping it into resistance perfectly. But even if you wanted to look at this as our higher high, then that would make this our confirmed higher low, which was also broken. So technically we could look for some bearish setups as well. In that case, I would be pulling a fib from our current high, looking down something like this. And notice we never would have got my STUBER fib entries on something like that. So it's still possible it goes up a little bit higher. It's also possible that it was just front run, but basically this is a level of interest for me as far as looking for resistance, whether if a guy ends up in a long position at some point, I would be getting cautious at this level, looking at taking some profits off along, that sort of thing, or even potentially looking for short setups on the lower time frames if we get up to that level. Oh, there we go on that smaller scalp I was talking about. We just hit my second target. So Bitcoin's still dumping a little bit. How is the 4 hour looking? I would really like to see at least this 0.5 target, you guys, at least hitting one of my 4 hour targets. And again, that would be around 104.4 thousand US dollars. Call it 104.5. I always front run my targets a little bit. I would even consider a 104.6 just because it is a larger time frame here. But yeah, I really wouldn't be too surprised to see us go a little bit lower yet before any signs of a real recovery. Let me just catch up on the chat a little bit here. Great to see so many familiar faces. Thank you guys for being here with me once again. And guys, if you do appreciate my level-headed approach, you like that I share some of my favorite trade strategies, you appreciate me doing a stream with you or my Telegram channel or anything, please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. All right, Bearman, tell it like it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to be too bearish because, again, there is potential for some sort of a bounce, but I just can't shake my bearish feeling. Obviously, you don't trade on gut feelings, but having that gut feeling and then, well, the gut feeling is there is because I've been looking at the structure the same. And basically, since I've had my bearish theories outlined since basically Christmas, definitely the start of January, nothing about it has been invalidated yet. And, you know, the fact that I laid out a bearish scenario 6 months ago and it still hasn't been invalidated, That's exactly why I have been stuck in perma bear mode, because I'm not just going to say, okay, that's long enough, I'm bored, so I'm going to be bullish now. That's not how I trade. So WIF one day, I'll check out WIF. I will also check out Doge. I will also check out Inge. Okay, first things first. Let's check out, what was the first one? WIF. And you said the daily, correct? One of those large time frame guys. This is one that I almost never look at. Let me just check a few things. One, we have a lower sell signal on the daily. That is not great to see on the MDX Trendmaster indicator. You can see we're respecting the resistance right now currently. So that is something to consider. This is actually, I do like this. Notice this is the MDX ALGO master indicator, and this is actually auto STUBER fibs, right? This indicator will actually has fib types, auto fib levels. So STUBER fibs are actually on there. You still want to know how to use them and how I pull my setups. If that's, if you do have the indicators, if you have access to them, understand that I don't just blindly follow the fibs that this thing pulls. However, in a case like this, it very much outlined exactly what I was about to. And the reasoning for that is we obviously broke some downtrends, right? Even on the daily here, we could say this, technically this would have been our first one, right? We had our low, lower low. That lower high was broken. So that's where our downtrend broke. At that point, we can start pulling a bullish fib, looking for some sort of a retrace. Obviously, we just kept climbing. And if you don't like micro analyzing like this, then we could say this level or this level. No matter how we look at it, the downtrend was broken on the daily. Doesn't mean it can't start right back up, because we've obviously broke some structure here. However, if I was looking for a bullish fib, I would be starting from the bottom of that swing, going to wherever the price ended up topping out, right? Because we just we kept climbing, not pulling back to that fib pocket, not pulling back. And this is currently where we've topped. So I agree that my fib would be exactly the same as how this indicator is showing it right now. One thing to consider, it may be front run a little bit because this mini downtrend was actually broken. Now that I look a little bit closer, is if we're really micro analyzing things here, which once again, I do, there's our low and obviously a lower low. That means this was our lower high on the micro trend, which we ended up breaking. So it is possible that we get a smaller one, something like this. And we could end up finding support here, which would be around, what is that, 69.3 cents down to 66.6 cents. But again, even if that ends up breaking, like that's more of a micro setup, right? Very micro analyzing that little trend that broke there. The thing is, if this one breaks, we still have the main support of the bigger channel. Obviously the bigger range. Like I said, there's always smaller ranges inside bigger ranges and stuff like that. But yeah, those are a couple of levels of interest for me at this point. I'll even take a look at the 4 hour, same thing on the 4 hour, right? We can see this same structure break right here. So to pull back to this purple box would make a lot of sense. Let's see what the Trendmaster indicator is saying. Little bit of mixed signals now, right? We had lower trending buy signals, lower trending sell signals, and now we have a very slightly higher buy signal. So a little bit of mixed signals on this. For those of you guys who are kind of wondering what I'm talking about with that, those of you who are in a lot of my live streams or, in some of the communities I'm in and stuff like that, you'll know that when it comes to indicators, it's not so much that I take each individual signal on its own, but I really like to notice which way they are trending. And especially in a case like this, the trend master, right? It's a trending indicator. So I love to basically point out when the signals are trending in a certain direction. It makes for easy invalidation levels. And just, again, obviously draws your eye to which way the trend is going and which way you should maybe be kind of looking for those trade setups, right? Sorry, I just wanted to hop over to Bitcoin, just half babysitting my position there. So with, like I said, not looking too bad since it obviously broke the big downtrend. But you know, there's a couple warnings there. Like I said, I don't trade this one myself. So sometimes when you trade a certain asset a lot, you start to notice certain things with it, certain things that do work or don't work as well with it. But basically, I do see a couple of potential support levels at least. But I do think, you know, especially if Bitcoin's going to keep tumbling, I think that altcoins could go a little bit lower yet as well. Doge. I'm just going to remove my drawings and also indicator. So this would be a very similar type of situation. We have obviously broke the downtrend where we had, this would have been our low, lower low, lower high, which we ended up breaking. And now we have pulled back into our support zone. We're already there. Right at the 786 right now. Notice that we did fill the 786 right down to the 886 absolutely perfectly. To be honest, it's looking a little weak. The fact that it never shot right back up. Nope. The fact that it never shot right back up to my 0.5 fib, it does look a little weak and a little concerning to me, because that would be my first scalp target, basically, if this is going to play out right. To be fair, it hasn't been invalidated yet. It's just looking a little weak that it never shot right back up there real quick. That's on the daily. The 4 hour, obviously the same structure. What is the trend master saying? We're still printing lower sell signals, lower buy signals. So yeah, I don't know. I'd be a little bit nervous honestly longing anything right now. I have my concerns. I think as soon as Bitcoin does get a bit of a bounce and looks fairly stable, I think altcoins will have a very nice pop off support. But you know, there's so many things even in the altcoins that are just, you know, warning us that the trend may be continuing to the downside. We tried to print a buy signal here, instantly shut down with a lower sell signal. So unless it really just starts chopping around right here and flipping signals back and forth, maybe that's a sign that, you know, it's starting to lose momentum. But at this point, I just see a lot of potential weakness happening. I'll take a look at the 5 minute, zoom right in. And yeah, the 5 minute is not doing this any favors. And again, guys, notice what I just mentioned with the indicators. Like here, for example, a higher buy signal. Look how beautiful of a pop that got. Followed by, we end up printing a lower sell signal and another lower sell signal. Those were both beautiful sell entries. Obviously, they happened a long time ago. This is a 5 minute. When was that? That was, yeah, very early today. But even right now, this trend master, even though we haven't had a new signal in quite a while, we can just see the pressure that it's applying, right? These blue lines here is my sell trend, and just obviously holding the price down as resistance. Liquidity starting to pile up to the upside. Once again, with those sell signals that we had, once again, notice how much liquidity ended up forming to the downside. Just very thick levels of liquidations there, and the price was drawn to that. So yeah, I would say that, you know, obviously I'm favoring the bearish side of things right now, just because there's so much momentum pushing the price down. And because, like I said, Bitcoin on the 4 hour was really, this is a 4 hour move and we haven't hit my targets yet. And we still have bearish structure on the 4 hour. So I'm having a hard time being bullish on anything right now, other than the odd micro cap. There's the odd micro cap that has broken structure and stuff like that. But, you know, those are all a gamble on their own. So A dump France. Yeah, that's true. Like I said at the start of the video, it's just the start of a dump. We're just seeing, a little bit of resistance step in. But that being said, just being that comment triggers me a little bit because I saw a lot of people celebrating this move that we got, a 1% move to the upside. And a lot of those same people are saying that this dump is a minor correction. They were very excited about a 1% move and a 3% move the opposite way. They're like, whatever. So that is something to watch for. But yeah, you're right. We haven't seen a crazy dump yet or anything. But that being said, 3% on high leverage, a guy like me who typically uses 69x leverage because I'm entering on the 1 minute or the 5 minute with tight invalidations, all of a sudden that 3% ends up being a nice position. So, but everyone trades differently, obviously. Me, I personally think a 3% move is worth trading. That's a pretty big one with leverage. So, Inge, I will check Inge as well. Basically the same thing. It is trying to break a little microstructure here, though. If you wanted a really tight invalidation for a long setup, I mean, technically we're breaking this little bit of structure here, and you could have a very tight stop loss on a long setup. It's risky. It's very risky and the fact that obviously the bears have some momentum right now, but it's a small amount of risk in the fact that it's a very tight invalidation as long as we close the candle above this. Sorry, just give me a sec. I'll take a little stab at that. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Yeah. What else? So that's the 5 minute. Let's take a look at the 4 hour on Inge. So yeah, very much like the rest of the market. So all the indicators, everything's basically just showing a lot of resistance. Everything is showing downward pressure right now. Doesn't mean it can't reverse. It's just the market's just not looking good. Even if we get a bounce, I can't help but feel it's going to be short-lived, because even like I said, with this structure on the 4 hour, even the fact that technically on this little uptrend here, just from where we bounce down here, we have this high, higher low, and that ended up dropping, right? So even at that point, if we do get some sort of a bounce, I wouldn't be too surprised to see us start finding resistance right around that same level, right around that 108,000 US dollars once again. That 786 overlapping the bigger 786. There's just a lot of things lining up for the bear side of things at this point. Unfortunately, haven't been invalidated yet, but I really think that the first thing that's going to get my attention from the bullish side of things will be if the RSI on the weekly goes back above 70. And I think that would take probably a couple weeks for that to show up. But if that happens, then I'll at least be willing to consider changing my tune. Inge on the 5 minute. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what happens here. How are you all feeling about the market, by the way? Oh, we got the old clickbait hack back. Trolls got a troll. Recovery now or bigger dump? That is quite the clickbait. But that's fun. Yeah, how are you guys all feeling about the market? Do you guys think that we are about to go parabolic? Do you think that we are about to nuke into oblivion? How do you guys think that we're going to treat the foreseeable future here? Midterm, long term, short term? How do you guys feel? Sui on the daily chart. I will check out Sui as well. I always forget to look at this one. I gotta erase all of my drawings because I don't know if they're still valid or not. Sui on the daily. I do not like that it is basically trying to hold on to its downtrend here. Even got a nice little swing fail here. So to me, it looks like there was a very small liquidity grab above resistance, if anything, and the micro downtrend is still on here. I would like to see us either push above this and then pull back for a support retest, something like that. Or where are we sitting at here? We got to be getting close to the 786. We got very close to the 786. So, I mean, there could have been a nice little long opportunity there for a scalp, but obviously that's come and gone. That was about a week ago already. So at this point, yeah, either support is lower at this point or we need to break some resistance. ALGO master indicator. So ALGO master is lining up with the fibs as well, right? The auto fibs are lining up with the same ones that I have pulled. So I like to have that confluence. The thing is, the fact that this one got front run so slightly with the 786, we got very close to the first target. Maybe that was also front run. I think that it could push a little bit higher, but it's just so risky at this point. I think betting against the bears, period, but also the fact that the nice easy scalp opportunity already played out. Trendmaster, we also have this lower sell signal here. So, and that's actually showing our resistance a little bit higher yet. So I would actually be looking at something. Actually, I would want to see the bulls be able to push above this $3.55. That would give me a lot more confidence because then it looks like we're breaking that downtrend a little bit. As it stands right now, yeah, again, we just see so many indicators and so many things just showing potential pressure from the bears, right? Unfortunately, that's kind of the common theme right now, is that since Bitcoin has tested and been rejected off that very obvious 4-hour resistance, the whole market is kind of a little bit spooked, right? Not totally spooked, but you can tell that everything's kind of trending down a little bit today. That's fine. It's not a crazy dump yet or anything. But I'll tell you one thing, that downtrend, it is what it is, right? Like I said at the beginning of the stream, low, lower low, lower high. That's all there is to it. The structure has a bearish structure break. And so many people FOMO'd short into support. People love breakout trading. So when people see support break, they love to hit that short button. Most people hate waiting for that pullback. And that pullback is exactly why I trade Fibonacci's. It makes it so much easier to wait for those deep corrections, high retrace bounces, whatever you want to call them. A big retracement. We'll go with that. Up till end of year, we'll see. So far, the entire year has been more so a downtrend, right? I mean, we had our initial sell-off, and now we're just struggling with that resistance again. So this year really hasn't done anything bullish yet. All that we have is less strength at the same level of resistance that we couldn't break earlier. But I am happy to go parabolic. I want to go parabolic. Just like most people, that is the easiest way to make money. I would love to see it. I just, as an actual trader, I just can't totally ignore all the bearish signs. That would be dumb, to put it nicely. Feelings don't matter. Trade the charts. Absolutely. That is 100% correct, because the market does not give a shit what we think or what we feel. All that matters. And that's exactly why I say, trade the charts. Don't trade tweets. Don't trade fundamentals. Like, investing is different. If you're investing on fundamentals, I would say investing without any fundamental knowledge would be silly, just like trading without charts would be silly. But they're two very different things, and I'm more of a trader myself, so I would rather look at the charts. But yeah, exactly. No room for feelings. Just trade the charts. And that's the thing too, right? Analysis only goes so far. I always say it. What really matters is how you execute the trade setup. And that's exactly why, having a trade setup, a trade strategy like this is so beneficial, right? While everybody was telling you to get bullish on social media, right as we approached 108K, I was starting to warn that, hey, we're at resistance again. Nothing magical, just basic chart structure. But when people have blindly listened to certain people in power and certain people giving speeches, certain tweets and all that sort of thing, and all of a sudden analysis goes right out the frickin' window. So, it's important to keep those emotions at bay and understand that it's way more it just makes way more sense, and it's way easier to understand some colorful lines than it is to understand how something is going to affect the entire global economy. So people who think they're going to get an edge by trying to understand the whole global economy because they can't figure out how basic chart structure works, good luck. Let's see, any new signals on the 1 minute? No, nothing yet. Still have the same sell signal. Still have the same resistance. All right. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So for those of you who are interested in seeing some more STUBER fib setups, just seeing more examples of how I look at chart structure, my overall thoughts on the market, there is a QR code on the screen and a link in the description down below if that's something that you want to take advantage of. BloFin currently giving special promotion deposit bonuses and stuff like that. I shared, or maybe I didn't share yet. If I didn't, I am going to share in the Telegram right after this. I think I did already. But yeah, guys, other than that, thank you so much for being here with me once again. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your evening. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. If you appreciated this, one more time, if you could hit that like and subscribe button, it would do me a huge favor, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you once again, my friends. Peace out.